We've all heard it since childhood. Be nice, be agreeable, be polite, don't make waves, smile even when you don't feel like it. But what if I told you that beneath this cultural obsession with being nice lies something much darker, something repressed? Psychologist Carl Jung warned us about this, that when we deny parts of ourselves for too long, especially to conform or be accepted, those parts don't disappear. They go underground. They enter what he called the shadow. And for many people, the role of the nice person, always agreeable, always smiling, never saying no, is not a sign of virtue. It's a carefully constructed mask, a persona, meant to hide everything they were told was unacceptable: their anger, their assertiveness, their truth. In this video, we're going to pull back that mask. We'll explore how society has created a cult of niceness, how Jung's theories help us understand the damage this causes, and most importantly, how you can stop being nice and start being real, because real doesn't always mean polite, but it does mean powerful. Let's begin. From early childhood, we're taught that being nice is a virtue. Praise comes quickly when we smile, obey, and accommodate others, even at the expense of our own comfort. This conditioning is so pervasive that many of us begin to equate niceness with morality. But Jungian psychology urges us to question the surface. What is niceness really if it requires the denial of true emotions? The world doesn't just teach us to be good, it teaches us to be agreeable, palatable, and non-threatening. In doing so, it teaches us to suppress our authentic selves. Being too much becomes a danger. Too angry, too sad, too loud, too honest. Slowly, subtly, our natural expressions are shaved down until we're left with a socially acceptable version of ourselves, a hollow mask of kindness. What society deems nice is often a disguise for internal conflict. We become people-pleasers, not because we're inherently kind, but because we've learned that being real can cost us love, acceptance, and belonging. That's not virtue, that's survival. The cult of niceness is insidious because it's rewarded. You're more likely to be promoted if you're agreeable. You're more likely to be liked if you're quiet about your needs. You're praised for your selflessness, even if that selflessness is a form of self-erasure. This isn't a mere social norm. It's a psychological contract we unconsciously sign. But every reward for being nice comes at a cost: your truth. Jung would argue that this is how the persona, the social mask we wear, is born and reinforced. We show the world what it wants to see and exile the rest, but what happens to the parts we hide? Anger, envy, pride, even self-respect, all of these are banished into the unconscious. Yet the unconscious is not a storage closet. It's alive, brimming, and reactive. The more we bury, the more fragmented we become. Being rewarded for niceness is like being paid to lie about who you are. And over time, that lie becomes so convincing, we forget what our truth even sounded like. Niceness is not the same as goodness. But the two are so often confused that many live under the illusion that being polite, accommodating, and passive makes them a good person. This is especially true in cultures that prioritize collective harmony over individual authenticity. But Jung's teachings challenge this. Goodness involves integrity, not approval. Niceness often lacks the courage that real goodness demands. A nice person might avoid confrontation, but a good person speaks up when something is wrong. A nice person may smile while dying inside, but a good person honors their emotions, even when they're messy. The cult of niceness teaches us to fear our own emotional truth. It trains us to be silent in the face of discomfort, ours and others. And this silence becomes repression. It festers under the skin. Jung believed that what we repress doesn't disappears, it gains power. So when we strive to be nice at all costs, we are not transcending conflict. We are internalizing it. The social rewards of niceness come wrapped in emotional chains. You get invited, included, appreciated, but only if you maintain the mask. The moment you deviate, by asserting a boundary, expressing anger, or showing depth, the smiles turn cold. That's because the cult of niceness is fragile. It cannot tolerate authenticity, which is messy, contradictory, and unpredictable. Jung saw the danger in this. When society demands we be nice rather than real, it cultivates neurosis. We become walking contradictions, friendly on the sea, outside, fractured within. And yet this internal fracture is rarely questioned because being liked feels safer than being whole. But make no mistake, this safety is an illusion. Repressing yourself to fit a mold isn't security, it's psychological exile. You don't just lose the parts you suppress, you lose access to your vitality, creativity, and voice. And the more you pretend, the more disconnected you become, not just from others but from your own soul. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the persona as the social mask each of us wears, a necessary interface between our private selves and the outside world. It's the version of you designed to be seen, the professional, the agreeable friend, the helpful partner, the polite stranger. In moderation, the persona helps us navigate society, but when it becomes the totality of who we present to the world, it becomes a prison. For the nice person, the persona isn't just a tool, it's a performance. It's the constant need to appear harmless, agreeable, even self-sacrificing, regardless of how one feels inside. This mask becomes thicker over time, so fused with our identity that we forget it's a mask at all. We start to say yes when we mean no, smile when we feel rage, compliment when we feel resentment. What Jung feared most was the danger of identification with the persona, mistaking the mask for the self. When that happens, your identity becomes curated by fear of being rejected, disliked, or deemed not nice enough. The tragedy of the nice person's persona is not that it hides who they are. It's that it convinces them there's nothing beneath it. It creates a hollowed-out identity where authenticity is sacrificed on the altar of acceptance. Over time, you may find it difficult to even know what you actually want, feel, or believe. You've trained yourself to anticipate the desires of others so well that you've silenced your own, and society applauds you for it. You're easy to work with, well-liked, low maintenance, but those compliments hide a deeper cost. You've become digestible, not real. Jung believed that any aspect of the self-denied expression would eventually seek it through the unconscious, often through projection, neurosis, or crisis. The persona, when unbalanced, doesn't just hide the shadow, it strengthens it. The more you deny your truth for the sake of appearances, the more pressure builds in the parts of you that remain unseen, and eventually, something has to give. The mask of niceness is often reinforced in childhood. Many children quickly learn that being agreeable brings praise, while defiance or emotional intensity invites punishment or withdrawal. This conditioning makes the persona feel like a survival mechanism. To be loved, one must be pleasant. To be safe, one must suppress. And so begins a lifelong habit of emotional editing. This edited self becomes the default. Even in moments where honesty would liberate you, you defer to the script. Be nice, don't rock the boat, don't make anyone uncomfortable. But emotional repression is never benign. The longer the persona dominates, the more the shadow is exiled. And what Jung makes clear is this: whatever we exile, we do not eliminate. We empower it through denial. The nice person often erupts in private. Panic attacks, passive aggression, depression, or sudden bursts of rage. These are not failures of temperament, they are symptoms of repression. The persona may fool others, but the unconscious keeps score. Perhaps the most dangerous aspect of the persona is that it is socially rewarded, and especially when it mimics virtue. When niceness becomes your identity, any deviation from it feels like moral failure. You start to equate authenticity with selfishness, anger with sin, assertiveness with cruelty. And so the nice person doesn't just fear being disliked, they fear being bad. This internal moralization traps them in an endless loop. The more they try to be nice, the more they abandon themselves and the more shame they feel when real emotions break through. Jung taught that growth requires confrontation, with oneself, with one's lies, with the parts of the psyche buried beneath the persona. But this confrontation feels like death to the nice person because it threatens the very identity they've constructed. What they don't realize is that behind the mask is not a monster, It's a human being aching to be whole. And wholeness doesn't come through approval, it comes through truth. The irony of being nice is that it often comes with a storm of unacknowledged rage. While the outward demeanor of the so-called nice guy or nice girl radiates calm, patience, and agreeableness, beneath the surface lies a reservoir of resentment, disappointment, and bitterness. But where does it come from? Jung would say it's the inevitable result of self-betrayal. When you consistently sacrifice your needs, your voice, your truth for the sake of being liked, you create a fracture within the psyche. Over time, that fracture becomes a wound and the pain festers. Yet because expressing anger contradicts the identity of the nice person, that anger is suppressed, redirected, or turned inward. Passive-aggressive comments, emotional withdrawal, martyrdom, or even somatic symptoms like migraines or stomach issues often emerge as the only acceptable outlets for a rage that's never been owned. You're not allowed to be angry, so your body and subconscious find ways to express it for you. One of the most overlooked aspects of niceness is its dependency on expectation. The nice person isn't just being kind for kindness' sake. They're playing a role with an unspoken hope that their goodness will be reciprocated, their sacrifice rewarded, their restraint acknowledged. But when reality fails to meet those expectations, when others take advantage, ignore their needs, or fail to respond with the same level of emotional investment, the nice person is left feeling betrayed. And this betrayal doesn't just hurt, it enrages. But because that rage feels incompatible with their identity, it has nowhere to go. It simmers beneath the surface, often manifesting in quiet resentment or in subtle sabotage. Jung called this the return of the repressed. What we refuse to acknowledge returns in distorted, often destructive ways. For the nice person, this means that the very image they work so hard to maintain may begin to crack under the pressure of emotional incongruence. There's also an existential loneliness that plagues the nice person, a loneliness rooted not in being alone, but in never feeling seen. Because their niceness is a shield, not a window, others rarely know who they really are. They become liked but not understood, respected but not known. Their emotional compliance ensures social harmony, but robs them of intimacy. The result? An unspoken fury that no one recognizes. And this hidden anger begins to shape their worldview. People are selfish, life is unfair, kindness is punished. But what they don't realize is that the world isn't punishing them. It's responding to the false version of them they've been presenting. When you never say what you want, others stop asking. When you always say yes, people assume you mean it. The anger that arises isn't just about being overlooked, it's about the self having been neglected by its own inhabitant. Jung reminds us that the parts we abandon don't die. They wait, and their return can be volcanic. To heal the hidden rage of the nice person, one must begin by acknowledging its existence. This is no small task. Most nice people have built their identities around emotional control and moral superiority. To admit to anger feels like a collapse of the self. But Jungian psychology invites us into that collapse, not to destroy us, but to reveal what we've been protecting all along. Anger is not the enemy, it's a signal. It shows where boundaries have been crossed, where needs have been ignored, where the soul has been silenced. In the hands of the conscious self, anger becomes a compass, not a weapon. But this requires honesty. It requires letting go of the image of being endlessly accommodating. It demands the courage to be real. Only when the nice person stops fearing their darkness can they begin to express their truth. And that truth, while it may not always be nice, is what sets them free. At the heart of compulsive niceness is something far more insidious than simple good manners. It's an addiction to approval. And like any addiction, it distorts perception, behavior, and identity. The need to be liked isn't just a preference. For the nice person, it becomes a survival strategy. From an early age, many internalize the belief that love is conditional. You get praised when you're polite, when you smile, when you suppress your frustration and keep the peace. Over time, these small reinforcements create a psychological equation. Being liked equals being safe. And thus, the authentic self, complete. With all its messy, complex, unfiltered emotions, is slowly exiled. In its place, a polished version is presented to the world, one designed to anticipate others' needs, avoid disapproval, and earn affection. But this approval comes at a steep cost, a growing disconnect from the true self. Jung might say that the persona is overinflated here, masking the very soul it was meant to serve. The approval seeker doesn't just want to be liked, they fear being disliked with a kind of existential panic. Criticism feels like annihilation. Disagreement feels like rejection. This creates a deeply reactive way of living, where every decision is filtered through an imaginary audience. What will they think of me becomes the guiding principle. And ironically, this obsession with image often makes relationships feel hollow. When you're constantly performing, you're never truly present. People might like you, but you'll never feel loved, because deep down, you know they don't actually see you. They only see the version of you that you've crafted to win their favor. This leads to a profound emptiness that even endless praise can't fill. Jung warned that when we invest too much in the persona, we become strangers to ourselves. The more we depend on external validation, the less we trust our inner compass, and that dependency breeds quiet desperation. Approval addiction is especially dangerous because it's socially rewarded. A person who sacrifices themselves for others, who avoids conflict, who always seems agreeable, they're often seen as virtuous, admirable even. But underneath that smiling exterior lies a soul on life support. This person doesn't say no, not because they don't want to, but because they can't risk the disappointment of others. They give compliments they don't mean, offer help. They resent and say yes when every fiber in their being is screaming no. Over time, this erodes their sense of integrity. They become actors in their own lives, rehearsing lines written by others. Jung's work speaks to the tragedy of this kind of self-abandonment. In the pursuit of acceptance, we trade our wholeness for likability. And wholeness, true psychological integration, can't coexist with constant self-betrayal. We might earn the world's admiration, but we lose our soul in the process. The antidote to approval addiction isn't rejection, it's self-acceptance. But this kind of acceptance can't be faked. It requires shadow work, a ruthless honesty about who you are, what you want, and what you're no longer willing to hide. When you begin to see that your worth isn't dependent on the reactions of others, you reclaim a power that was never meant to be outsourced. This doesn't mean becoming callous or selfish. It means developing boundaries. It means telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. It means risking not being liked in order to be free. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires confronting the parts of us we've disowned. For the nice person, this means facing the fear of disapproval head-on. Only by walking through that fear can they discover that real connection, real respect, and real love are only possible when you stop performing and start being. Authenticity, not approval, is what liberates. On the surface, kindness seems unquestionably good. We're taught to be kind, polite, agreeable, to consider others before ourselves. But what happens when that kindness is no longer an expression of genuine care and instead becomes a subtle form of control? This is the paradox of the nice personality. Often, what appears to be kindness is actually manipulation in disguise. Not the malicious, scheming kind we associate with villains, but a more unconscious, culturally sanctioned manipulation. It's the transactional logic of, if I'm good to you, you owe me your approval. Many nice people don't even realize they're doing it. They offer help, agree with opinions, and anticipate needs, not from a place of authentic generosity, but from a desperate hope to be liked, needed, or validated. This sets up an unspoken contract. I give to you, so you won't reject me. And when that contract is broken, when kindness isn't returned, they often feel betrayed, even angry. This dynamic becomes even more toxic when expectations are unspoken. The nice person might never voice their needs directly, but they expect others to somehow know and reciprocate. And when that doesn't happen, they begin to resent those around them. Ironically, the very behavior they adopt to avoid conflict ends up generating internal conflict. Carl Jung spoke about the dangers of repression, how the things we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves don't disappear, they go underground and grow more powerful. In this case, the repressed emotion is anger. Because nice people believe anger is bad or dangerous, they never express it directly. Instead, it seeps into their relationships through guilt-tripping, passive aggression, or subtle withdrawal. They might say things like, "After everything I've done for you," without realizing they've been keeping score all along. Kindness becomes currency, and that turns people, even those they love, into emotional debtors. This kind of covert manipulation doesn't stem from malice. It stems from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of not being enough. But fear, when left unchecked, corrupts even the most beautiful intentions. And the damage it causes is twofold. First, it erodes trust. People begin to sense the hidden strings attached to kindness, even if they can't quite articulate it. They feel emotionally indebted or subtly coerced, and this makes authentic connection difficult. Second, it damages the giver. When your acts of kindness are rooted in the hope of control or reciprocity, they stop being truly fulfilling. Instead of joy, you feel anxiety. Instead of connection, you feel lonely. Jung believed that integrity means aligning the conscious and unconscious mind, living in a way where your external actions reflect your internal truths. But if your kindness is laced with unacknowledged needs, then you're not living in integrity. You're role-playing, and that role is slowly killing your authenticity. The solution isn't to stop being kind, it's to stop being dishonest about your reasons for it. Kindness, when rooted in wholeness, is powerful. It's not transactional. It doesn't seek applause or demand emotional payment. It flows naturally from a person who is already enough, with or without others' approval. To reach that place, you must confront the parts of you that fear being unliked, unseen, or alone. You must stop using kindness as a shield and start using truth as your guide. That means learning to say no without guilt. It means offering help without expectation. It means allowing yourself to be disliked when necessary. Because your value no longer depends on others' opinions. This is the essence of shadow work, bringing light to the motivations you've buried under layers of social conditioning. Jung taught that freedom comes from integration, not denial. When you own your hidden motives, they lose their grip, and only then can kindness return to what it was meant to be, an expression of strength, not fear. To understand why being nice can be a mask, we must go beneath the surface and examine what it hides. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is central here. The shadow is everything within you that you've repressed, denied, or judged as unacceptable. It's not inherently evil, it's simply what you've disowned. And for nice people, that shadow often contains qualities they've worked their entire lives to suppress: anger, selfishness, ambition, sexuality, pride, even assertiveness. These traits were likely discouraged early on. Perhaps a parent only offered affection when you were quiet, obedient, or helpful. Perhaps you were punished for expressing anger or for asserting your needs. Over time, you learned that being good meant being selfless, agreeable, and undemanding. So you buried those unacceptable parts and built your identity around their absence. But those traits didn't disappear. They became part of your unconscious, and they started influencing you. From the shadows, Jung believed that the more you deny your shadow, the more it controls you. And ironically, the nicest people often carry the most potent shadows. Think about the friend who never raises their voice, but erupts in rage one day over something trivial, or the partner who seems endlessly giving, but later weaponizes. That history of giving to guilt-trip you into submission. These are signs that the repressed parts of their psyche are leaking through the cracks. The shadow doesn't remain passive, it demands expression. When it's not allowed to surface consciously, it finds other ways to manifest, through passive aggression, martyrdom, moral superiority, or emotional manipulation. And because these expressions are unconscious, the nice person often doesn't even realize what they're doing. They maintain their identity as kind, loving, generous, while quietly perpetuating cycles of resentment, control, and self-betrayal. True shadow work requires brutal honesty. It means asking yourself questions most people avoid. Who am I when I'm not trying to be liked? What do I resent others for that I never allow myself to express? Where in my life am I playing the victim to avoid taking responsibility? These questions cut deep, but they reveal the truth beneath the persona. Jung warned that integration is not about becoming good in a moral sense. It's about becoming whole. Wholeness requires you to face not only your light, but your darkness. It means looking directly at the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime avoiding. For the nice person, that often includes admitting to hidden competitiveness, jealousy, spite, rage, or even the desire for control. It's painful, but it's liberating. Because once you name these parts, they lose their unconscious power. You stop projecting them onto others. You stop manipulating through kindness. You stop fearing yourself. When you begin integrating your shadow, your kindness transforms. It no longer comes from a place of fear, obligation, or identity. Preservation. It becomes a genuine expression of your inner wholeness. You're no longer kind because you have to be. You're kind because you choose to be. And you're also capable of being firm, direct, even fierce when needed, because you've reclaimed those parts of yourself too. You don't need to prove your goodness to anyone, because your self-worth no longer hinges on external approval. Jung said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's the real work. And for those trapped in the cult of niceness, it's the path to liberation. The shadow is not your enemy. It's the key to everything you've been avoiding, and everything you've truly longed for: authenticity, depth, power, and peace. Repression doesn't just affect the mind. It leaves deep imprints on the body. Jungian psychology has long recognized the psychosomatic relationship between emotional suppression and physical health. When you are constantly nice, constantly swallowing your anger, your truth, your boundaries, your nervous system doesn't just forget. It internalizes the pressure. Over time, the body becomes the storage unit for all the emotions that the conscious self refuses to process. Chronic tension, fatigue, migraines, digestive issues, autoimmune flare-ups, these are not merely physical conditions. They're the body's language for what the psyche can no longer carry alone. For many nice people, their illnesses become the only outlet their shadow has left. And ironically, even these symptoms are often endured quietly, as they continue to suppress any need that might inconvenience others. Repression wears a friendly face, but inside the body is screaming. The connection between repressed emotion and physical illness is not hypothetical, it's documented. Numerous studies in psychosomatic medicine show that unexpressed anger, grief and anxiety correlate with chronic conditions like hypertension, IBS, fibromyalgia, and chronic fatigue syndrome. The reason is simple. Your nervous system is not designed to live in constant appeasement mode. When you override your natural impulses, fight, assert, rest, say no, you engage in a daily betrayal of your biology. Your body floods with cortisol and adrenaline, creating low-level stress responses that never fully resolve. Over time, these stress cycles create inflammation and wear down the immune system. Jung called this the price of inauthenticity. When your entire personality is curated to be acceptable, agreeable, and unthreatening, the body becomes the battleground where truth and persona collide. And the toll is far greater than most people are willing to admit. One of the tragic ironies of being too nice is that the very behavior meant to preserve relationships can result in deep loneliness and disconnection from both others and yourself. The body reflects this fragmentation. You may smile outwardly, but inside your muscles hold years of tension. You may say, "I'm fine," while your gut churns with unease. Somatic therapists often describe the armor of nice people, the shallow breathing, the locked jaw, the tight chest, as the body's way of holding back what the psyche fears will be too much. Repression doesn't make these feelings disappear. It just buries them deeper into the tissues, into posture, into patterns of movement and fatigue. Over time, the body forgets how to feel safe being fully expressed. And this physical disconnection becomes yet another reason the nice person feels invisible, unheard, or mysteriously drained, while still trying to be good. Healing begins when you stop asking your body to absorb what your voice is afraid to say. Shadow work is not just an intellectual process, it's somatic. It requires feeling what you've numbed, expressing what you've silenced, and allowing the body to finally release its role as emotional storage unit. Practices like somatic therapy, breathwork, trauma-informed yoga, and even honest embodied movement can reconnect you with the truth that's been trapped inside. Jung's work teaches us that the psyche seeks integration, not perfection. That includes the body. When you begin honoring your own needs, asserting your boundaries, and acknowledging the full range of your emotions, your body starts to relax. Your symptoms begin to shift. Your energy returns. This isn't magic. It's the physical result of emotional truth. Being nice at the expense of your wholeness is a slow form of self-erasure. Reconnection starts by giving your body permission to stop pretending. For the chronically nice person, boundaries feel like betrayal. Deep down, many have internalized the idea that love must be earned through self-abandonment, so they bend, they agree, they accommodate, they smile even when their soul is screaming no. Jung would say this is where the persona begins to devour the self. The good daughter, the reliable friend, the supportive partner. These masks often develop in childhood when love and acceptance seemed conditional. To say no was to risk rejection, and so boundaries became dangerous. As adults, these early emotional lessons don't just vanish. Instead, they evolve into chronic people-pleasing, burnout, resentment, and a total inability to prioritize one's own needs without guilt. Being nice becomes a prison, and the absence of boundaries becomes the invisible chain that keeps the true self locked away, safe, silent, and suffering. Boundaries are not walls, they're bridges to authentic connection. But for nice people, they feel like acts of aggression. Why? Because they're unfamiliar. When you've spent a lifetime being defined by others' needs, your own feels selfish or even shameful. But here's the paradox. Every time you suppress your truth to preserve a relationship, you slowly erode that relationship's foundation. Real intimacy cannot exist without honesty, and honesty requires boundaries. Jungian psychology tells us that repression always creates a shadow. The person who never says no often becomes passive-aggressive, irritable, or emotionally unavailable. They may fantasize about escape, silently resent their obligations, or even sabotage relationships they feel trapped in. The irony is cruel. In trying to be liked by everyone, the nice person ends up emotionally alone, misunderstood, overwhelmed, and invisible in their own life. Setting boundaries for the first time can feel like an existential crisis. You'll shake. You'll over-explain. You'll wonder if you're being cruel. But these are not signs you're doing it wrong. They're signs you're reclaiming your nervous system. When someone is used to performing niceness, choosing authenticity feels unsafe. But it's the most profound act of psychological freedom. You're not being rude by saying no to what drains you. You're not selfish for needing space, silence, or rest. You're not wrong for protecting your peace. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires confronting the parts of you that were never allowed to exist. Boundaries are the voice of those parts finally being heard. And while some people may resist this new version of you, the ones meant to walk beside you will adapt. Those who truly love you don't just tolerate your boundaries, they respect them. Learning to set boundaries is not just a psychological task, it's a spiritual one. It's the moment when the self stands up and says, I matter too. For the nice person, this moment is revolutionary. It's a reorientation of identity, from being defined by others to being defined by your own inner truth. And it's not about becoming hardened or unkind. It's about finally living from a place of integrity. When you set a boundary, you're not pushing people away. You're inviting them to meet you in a space of mutual respect. Jung's work reminds us that healing isn't about eliminating the persona. It's about integrating it. Let the kindness remain, but let it come from a place of choice, not obligation. Let your yes be real because you've reclaimed the right to say no. That's when nice stops being a mask and starts becoming love with a spine. Shadow work is the path to true freedom. It is the courageous journey of facing the parts of yourself that have been suppressed, ignored, or rejected, often for years or even decades. When you've spent your life pretending to be nice, those hidden parts of you, the anger, the fear, the pain, and the desires that didn't fit within your idealized image, are pushed into the shadows. They still exist, lurking beneath the surface, influencing your decisions, relationships, and emotional well-being. Jung taught that these repressed aspects of the psyche don't go away. Instead, they work in the background, subtly controlling your behavior in ways that can sabotage your happiness. Shadow work is not about eradicating these parts of yourself. It's about integrating them, acknowledging their existence and learning to live with them in a healthier, more balanced way. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. The idea of confronting your shadow can be terrifying. It requires you to look at the darkest parts of yourself, the parts you've been avoiding, the parts that make you uncomfortable or ashamed. But the beauty of shadow work is that when you finally face what's hidden, you disarm it. The more you repress your emotions, the more they control you. By recognizing your shadow, you reclaim the energy that's been locked away. This process doesn't happen overnight. It requires deep reflection, honesty, and sometimes painful self-discovery. But with every step you become more authentic. You stop pretending to be someone you're not to please others. You stop wearing the mask of nice and start embracing the full spectrum of who you are, light and dark, joy and sorrow, love and anger. You learn that these elements aren't separate. They're part of your whole, authentic self. Through shadow work, you not only liberate yourself from the constraints of the persona, but also break free from the need for external validation. The nice person is often driven by a deep-seated fear of rejection. They want to be liked, to be accepted, and to avoid conflict at all costs. This need for approval traps them in a cycle of people-pleasing and self-suppression. Shadow work reveals the underlying fears and insecurities that fuel this behavior, allowing you to confront them directly. As you work through these fears, you begin to reclaim your personal power. You no longer need to bend to others' expectations to feel worthy. You can set boundaries, speak your truth, and express yourself authentically, without guilt, without shame, and without the fear of losing love. True freedom comes when you stop performing for others and start living for yourself. The beauty of shadow work is that it transforms pain into power. The anger you once feared becomes the fuel for healthy assertiveness. The sadness you've repressed becomes the doorway to empathy and deeper emotional connection. By embracing the parts of you that were once hidden, you no longer fear them. Instead, you channel their energy into creative, positive outlets that help you grow. You're no longer defined by your past wounds, but empowered by your ability to heal. Jung believed that embracing the shadow is a critical step in individuation, the process of becoming the person you are truly meant to be. This isn't a journey to become perfect, but to become real. And in that reality, you are free. You can finally step into your true power, no longer controlled by the fear of being too much or too little. You become whole. The transition from being a people-pleaser to a truly empowered individual is one of the most profound transformations you can undertake. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but it's entirely possible with self-awareness and dedication. To stop being nice and start being real means giving up the constant need for approval and accepting that you are worthy of love and respect without having to earn it by meeting others' expectations. It means setting boundaries, being honest about your needs, and learning to say no. It's a shift from seeking external validation to cultivating self-worth from within. The first step is recognizing that your niceness has often been a defense mechanism, a way to avoid confrontation and keep others happy at the expense of your own needs. As you shed this false persona, you begin to open up space for authenticity. This process starts by embracing the uncomfortable emotions and experiences you've been avoiding. You no longer need to run from anger, frustration, or even fear. These emotions are valid, and they hold valuable information about your desires, boundaries, and what matters most to you. By accepting and processing these feelings, you allow yourself to express them in healthy ways. The more you practice authenticity, the less power the nice persona holds over you. Instead of pretending to be perfect or constantly conforming to others' expectations, you learn to embrace your imperfections. You acknowledge that being human means making mistakes, learning from them, and growing in the process. Over time, this gives you the confidence to act in alignment with your true self, not the image you've created to please others. Letting go of the nice mask requires breaking free from the fear of rejection. Many people who are overly nice are afraid of being abandoned or unloved if they don't live up to others' ideals. The truth is, real connection happens when you show up as yourself, when you are raw, authentic, and honest. As you stop hiding behind the mask of niceness, you'll attract relationships that are genuine, built on mutual respect and acceptance. You'll realize that those who truly love you will love you for who you are, not for the role you've been playing. This shift in perspective is liberating because it means no longer chasing after a version of love that is conditional and based on your performance. Instead, you begin to cultivate the kind of relationships where both you and the other person are free to be your authentic selves. Finally, this journey of transformation leads to a powerful sense of inner peace. You become a person who can stand firm in their beliefs and desires without the constant anxiety of trying to please others. You become comfortable with who you are, regardless of how others perceive you. This inner strength allows you to take on challenges with courage, express yourself without fear of judgment, and live with integrity. The more you embrace your true self, the less you feel the need to pretend. You no longer need to conform to outdated societal norms or expectations. The shift from nice to real is the shift from weakness to strength. As we've explored, the journey from being nice to being real is not an easy one, but it is the key to reclaiming your personal power and living a life of true fulfillment. The nice persona, while often adopted with good intentions, is a prison built from the fear of rejection, the need for approval, and the avoidance of uncomfortable emotions. But when we choose to face these emotions head-on and embrace the fullness of who we are, anger, fear, joy, and everything in between, we stop suppressing our authentic selves by recognizing the root causes of our niceness and choosing to integrate the shadow aspects of ourselves. We unlock the ability to create deep, meaningful relationships based on honesty and mutual respect, not false personas. We stop chasing after approval and start cultivating self-worth from within. In doing so, we no longer feel the pressure to perform for others. We simply live in alignment with who we truly are. This shift from pleaser to powerful is the process of reclaiming your personal integrity and stepping into your full potential. It's a transformation that allows you to experience life not as a constant series of performances to meet external expectations, but as a journey of living authentically. You no longer need to hide behind the mask of niceness because you understand that you are worthy and valuable just as you are. As you continue to do the work, remember this: true freedom comes when you stop pretending to be someone you're not. It comes when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, to express your true emotions, and to stand firm in your boundaries. And in the process, you become a person who is powerful not because of their perfection, but because of their authenticity. So, step into your power, let go of the mask, be real, be raw, and most importantly, be you.